I think everybody that's going to be here is here. Um, and there's some on travel. There's some that hasn't responded, that they haven't put in any homework or assignments. I haven't heard back from them. We have a new committee member, General George Smith, and he was supposed to join us this evening, but who knows what has happened. So we're just going to go on with our meeting and take great notes and leave it for everybody. But usually this is what happens on committees. You know, there's the first big show, and then they kind of determine if it's going to be a good match or they have time or not, and then it starts decreasing. But that means that the ones that are left here behind, that we're still here committed, whoever that is, really are responsible for making sure that we deliver a top-notch product, a result for the commission for what we signed up for. And I am very, very happy to be able to work alongside Dr. Bitzer in leading this to make sure that we have a good experience, and one that we can produce something that's of value. So on that note, did everybody get the meeting minutes, and were you able to review them?
Yes.
Okay, was everything in order for you? Did you feel like it was correct and accurate?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you refer to those meeting minutes, I would just ask to look at that timeline that I put in there. Remember that January through May, excuse me, let me just take a look real quick just to double check so that everybody knows our schedule. So January through May we are going to be it's going to be a combination of things. We're going to be educating ourselves, whether we bring in somebody that asks questions or that we deliver a list of questions for Dr. Bitzer maybe, and to get some backup to be able to get our questions answered. It is also to develop, we started out with, Bill gave us a great suggestion to start out with some assumptions. I put those together for us as like a foundation of where we're coming from. And we are to develop a survey or a list of interview questions. However, we have to determine how we are going to gather, the best way to gather our information. So that's happening January through May. I see us in March. My hope is that March we will then finalize, we can work together and finalize the survey or interview or our plan to execute how we're going to bring in this data that we would like. And then, so we spend March and April delivering that, conducting that research or engagement or whatever it's going to be, so that when we convene in May, we can then take and compile everything that we've done, and we can start making the first draft. Does that sound reasonable for everyone?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yep. Go ahead, Brandon. Did you say yes with your hand, or did you have a question?
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds perfect.
Okay. So on that note, I would like to attack the first set. We had 3 questions, 3 pieces of homework. And not everybody delivered their assignment, but that's okay, because we have some things to work on. And we have some things that we can discuss. So if you're here today and you weren't able to submit anything, that's okay, because maybe based upon our discussion today, you might be able to come up with some, contribution, something extra that we didn't think about. So we have limited time. I want to be respectful of our time so that at 8 o'clock we're done. So this will be all business, okay? The assumptions, if you want to open up your assumptions, remember I said, and correct me if I'm wrong, remember, I'm only doing this, I'm putting it out there, and I am so open for corrections, edits, whatever. But this is a comprehensive exploration of assumptions surrounding the mail-in voting in North Carolina. As we delve into the intricacies of this electoral process, it is essential to recognize and analyze the various assumptions that shape public discourse and influence opinions. From concerns about the security of mail-in ballots to the impact on voter accessibility, this list aims to shed light on the underlying beliefs that frame discussions, influence perceptions, and attitudes about mail-in voting. The following is an initial compilation of general insights shared by committee members. These diverse and thoughtful contributions will help to develop the committee's strategic approach when conducting the necessary research, or I would say engagement, to meet the goals of this project. The first two, I did not add names. I didn't feel that it was necessary to add names because now we're getting into some of our own opinions. They can be strong. I want to remind everybody that we are individuals and every one of our opinions is valuable. And we have to have a safe place to be able to express, to push back, kind of grapple, maybe even with myths or whatever it is that we're dealing with in this committee. It is a direct mirror image of what is happening out in our communities. These are what these conversations that we have, I feel, are essential because we can mirror who our group is, who our people are, and where we're coming from so that we can better have that positive public discourse as well among us. So in that, I would say, be honest, upfront, direct. Don't be afraid. At the end of the day, we may not agree at all. We could hear your side and not agree. However, we are a united front. That's a very powerful thing. And that's something that our country is dealing with now, and how to be a united front despite our disagreements. So in that, keeping that in mind, let's look over the assumptions. The first one is, how about if I share my screen with everybody so everybody can see it at the same time?
Okay.
Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I can see it. We can see it.
All right. So if you see a blank area in the discussion, it just means that there really wasn't any kind of, not the person that sent it in didn't expound necessarily on that. And forgive me if I tried to reduce it, tried to, make it more succinct. So I might have changed some things, but never with the intention of trying to put words in people's mouths. I just tried to just compile it a little bit better. If you find that it's yours and it's not accurate in the sense of the spirit of it, or maybe I forgot something, please let me know and we'll fix it right now. The first assumption is access to mail-in voting benefits Democrats. With a short contribution, does anybody have any opinions about that? The assumption is that access to mail-in voting benefits Democrats.
This
Shawnee,
is Bill.
Go,
Who is
go ahead,
it?
Bill.
Oh, okay. I tend to understand that as a good assumption, but I wonder if it should be modified just a little, because not everyone would think that's the assumption. I mean,
Correct.
could you say a number of voters or something like that, or a large contingent of voters or something along those lines believe access to mail-in voting benefits? I mean, I think there is a general understanding that in my mind, when I talk to people, I think they do think
Yes.
it might tend to benefit Democrats. Whether it does or not, I'm not sure. But so would that be a fair way of modifying that assumption?
Yes. Anybody else with their opinions on this?
I think
I don't. Oh, go ahead.
I'm
Linda.
sorry. I just would like to add one comment. I think part of it is because Democrats make better use of mail-in voting, or access it more than other voters. Now, whether that is for some sort of benefit, I don't have an opinion about that one way or the other, but I do think Democrats use mail-in voting in a greater way than other voters.
Glenda, is that, I don't follow all the data and that sort of thing. Is that something we've gleaned from data that's available? Is that?
Yes, sir.
I have
think-
that data.
Okay, I was going to say yes.
Okay, shoot, Michael, what's the data?
So the data going back to 2008, and what I was able to do is pull together both the voter registration for each of the election years. So 08, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, and 22. What I was able to do was pull the voter registration data along with data of what is called the voter history. And that is basically a line if you were to request an absentee by mail ballot and return it and it was accepted, your vote record, your voter history record would be recorded with that data. That's the same with if you do it by absentee one stop, which is the early voting method, or if you vote on election day. So based on the research that I've got how each vote method broke down in each year by party registration. And so
Okay,
we're
say
talking
that
about
one more time. The source shows what?
So the source shows that between 2008 and 2016, registered Republicans were either a majority or a plurality of the votes being cast absentee by mail.
Hmm.
In
Okay,
28,
say that again. The source shows registration of Republicans were either a majority or
plurality
Of mail.
of mail-in ballots.
Hmm.
And if you
And
want, I
I'll-
can share a graph that has the breakdown by the three major party registrations
Sure,
for each year.
absolutely. How can I, Rachel, how can I share, how can Michael share his graph?
I think what I can do is, let's see. So if you would stop sharing your screen.
Okay,
don't
stop
think I-
share.
Yeah.
Okay,
And let me share this.
Hmm.
And so this is the election years here at the bottom, party registration by the columns. And so you see in 08, registered Republicans were 54% of all the absentee by mail ballots coming in. By 2016, they were down to 40%, registered Democrats 31, unaffiliateds 28. But then the flip occurs in 2018, and subsequently, it has been a kind of fairly stable,
fascinating.
though registered Republicans have tended to switch their votes to in-person voting either on election day or in early in-person voting and gone away from absentee by mail voting.
I
Well,
wonder,
that's interesting chart.
it
isn't
is, it's fascinating, but, and I'm not gonna be able to verbalize this very well because it's just now forming in my head when I see this. A lot of changes happened with the Republicans in 2016 and beyond. And the way mail-in voting was conducted. We went to longer periods of time. We have a couple of months that we're able to participate in early voting. I don't know. What do you think? What kind of changes happened that could possibly explain this?
Can I ask a question first so I
Sure.
understand this right? Michael, look at 2008. It says the Republican percentage is 54%. Are you saying that 54% of the voting public of Republicans that year voted by mail?
No.
No.
This is all right. This is by the method absentee by mail.
Okay,
So if we think about how somebody can cast a ballot, you have the option of absentee by mail, or you could cast a ballot early, which is what's called one stop, absentee in-person voting, or you can vote on election day. So you have three choices to vote, to cast your ballot. What these percentages represent is the vote method, absentee by mail, and within absentee by mail, what was the percentage breakdown by parties? So in 2008,
Okay.
all
Right.
of the absentee by mails, 54% of those ballots came from registered Republicans,
okay,
28%
Right.
from registered Democrats. 8.
gotcha.
So
Oh, I see.
that
So
is the process.
So every cycle there equals 100% between the three parties or the three sets.
Of that vote method.
Right.
that vote method.
Of that vote
Right.
method.
Right.
Okay.
I see now.
Okay. So
Wow.
to get to Shaughnessy's question. So by federal law, ballots have to go out 45 days before the election, particularly for overseas individuals who are requesting absentee by mail ballots. So the process is 45 days, you start to see the request coming in. It can happen even before those 45 days pre-election. But at that point, the counties will begin to send out the absentee by mail ballots by mail, and they can then be returned. Every year, when that election process is happening, and this will start next week for the primary in March, the North Carolina Board of Elections, State Board of Elections, will post a data file, and it will have those ballots that have been returned, not with any names of individuals or how they voted, but you can start to see the ballots coming in.
Yes.
And the only major change in this time period, 08 to 22, was during the 2020 election when the state board made the decision to go from 2 signatures required to 1 signature required. They have subsequently gone back to the 2 signatures in 2022, and this year there is additional mail-in requirements for certification of the ballot, particularly a voter ID. So the only major change that I'm aware of, and I'll go back and confirm this and check, but my only understanding of any changes was in 2020 due to the COVID pandemic, and that the board decided to make only 1 signature required as opposed to 2 that had been the previous requirement.
Okay.
Hmm.
Can you please put your citation on this and the whatever it needs? Where you pulled it, and I would like you to save it and put it when we're done and you get my copy of the meeting minutes. Could you please put your explanation as an attachment or within the document, however you want to do it? We'll collect that as our sources. So
Happy to
that
do
would
so.
be helpful.
Happy to do so.
Anybody have any comments about this revelation?
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you have the total universe of people that voted absentee each of those years so that you can see if, even if maybe the universe was bigger in 2008 that voted absentee by mail versus 2022? Do you have the total numbers of voters? If you do have that, could you just, is it about
It could be added.
amount, or is it a
I Yeah, I'm happy to do that. The general pattern in the overall numbers, absentee by mail tends to be 3 to 4% of all the ballots cast. So typically, on average, for a general election, November general election, I usually count on about 100,000, maybe 125,000 ballots coming in out of typically 4 to 5 million ballots cast. Now, the exception again is 2020,
Yes.
when absentee by mail went from about 3% in the previous presidential year to 19% of all the ballots cast that year.
Say that one more
2022,
time. It went from what percentage to 19?
about 3% in 2016 of all the ballots cast, 3% came by mail. In 2020, that number went up to 19% of all the ballots cast coming in by mail. 2022 saw it return back to 3, 4, 5%. So it is typically a fairly small percentage of the overall ballots cast, but that has been the general trend over time since at least 08.
Hmm.
Can
But I
you,
have all of that information and
yes,
I can
and when
pull it
you're,
together.
yes, if you pull that together and add that commentary, that would be great. When anybody's looking at this, my next question would be, are there, to Dr. Bitzer or whoever, are there any other data that we can show besides what you just gave that could that shows a, a different perspective of this, to give it a more complete view? What is the data that's missing?
The only other, go ahead.
So I have a comment. I mean, I would also think about like the disabled population and accommodations for disabled voters at the polling place. So are people, I mean, age has a lot to do with it, right? Like are voters, better accommodated at polling places now than they were in the past, perhaps, or like something that has to do with that. And maybe the like idea of having a like a paper ballot or something that has like a record. I haven't been living in North Carolina all the way back then, so I don't recall what voting was like in every county, but I know we have, for all intents and purposes, an all paper ballot system now, but I don't think that was the case in 2008, right? I could be wrong, but maybe something with that could be a reason why we're seeing this trend. That's just like an idea or like a variable that we could look at.
So I know that one of the other committees that is actually doing the in-person voting, they're tackling that issue of access and accessibility to the ballots. So I think that I'll check with that committee and see what their process, what they're looking into specifically on that, and can come back and let y'all know what they're finding and what they're focused on. I do know that in North Carolina, we have had this process of curbside voting patterns, and that has been extended into the early in-person voting. So, but we don't have records going back because I think it was only in either 2018 or 2020 that we started to see the records being noted of curbside voting for in-person voting methods.
Okay.
Michael,
Yes.
this is Bill, but curbside voting requires a lot more attention to a few more folks and some gizmos. I think we had one where you drive up and it go over a cord and it rings a bell inside and someone comes out and comes up to the car. They might be 50 yards from the actual voting area because of the parking. And so am I to assume then that it's only done where counties have that kind of manpower available? It's not a mandatory thing at every absentee voting in person, pre-election day voting?
Yeah, that I do not know, but I know that, the other group that's working on the in-person voting, I can certainly ask and see if they're going to be asking that question about the process of curbside and if it is a process that is mandated as standardized or how the counties may be doing it.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I had anecdotally, my mother always wanted to vote, but she liked to go to that drive-up voting. So if it were available, she's not going to mail one in. She's going to have somebody drive her down there so she can put her hand on it. I mean,
Okay.
so that's why it might be important about whether mail-in balloting has an impact or not.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Because they may have difficulty or disability, maybe are older, that they would like to vote for curbside. And because maybe they don't have any curbside or they're unaware of it, then that's what they would choose to mail in to
Right.
vote by mail. So we just don't know. But that's a question that we need to put down. So in that question, may be needed to be asked by another committee that's with in-person voting, because that would be in-person voting.
Right.
So
And I'll
we're
ask about
focused.
that.
Yeah, we're focused on mail-in ballots. Got to try to be focused, because at the end of the day, you're going to have your executive committee looking over all the drafts and making a beautiful connection between all of them. So let's give them our piece for mail-in voting. Okay. The next one, let's move on. It's 7:34. The public does not distinguish the final tally from the election night vote count in the media's projections. I'll read that again. The public does not distinguish the final tally from the election night vote count in the media's projections. And this person said, I think that the committee should be aware of a widespread belief that absentee ballots are not counted under certain conditions. For example, after the election is called, they stop counting absentee ballots. In the same vein, the rhetoric by Donald Trump suggests that the horse race dynamic of the election continues into the vote tabulation phase. He made claims that he was ahead or behind throughout the period when absentee votes were being counted. In reality, the outcome was determined the moment the final ballot was cast. The vote tabulators are simply opening envelopes and scanning ballots.
I don't understand that.
I think, may I just add my 2 cents? I think respectfully, adding Donald Trump's claims is no different than the TV, CNN, MSNBC making claims of who's voting, who's ahead and who's behind. That's neither here nor there to me.
So this would also, I think, fall, and I'm on this other committee, the counting ballots committee. I think the issue oftentimes is the public perception, the role of the media, and the process of counting and reporting the vote tallies is certainly something that I know the counting ballots group is, dealing with and addressing head on. My understanding is that when absentee by mail ballots, and this is something that we can, kind of highlight from our group with this particular topic, when absentee by mail ballots are delivered to the county board of elections, they are secured.
Yes.
And they are processed.
Yes.
But the vote tallies are not run until election day. And so when you're watching the State Board of Elections website and looking at the election returns, when 7:30 comes about and those first votes are reported, those are oftentimes the absentee by mail ballots that have come in, been processed, and are ready for reporting in terms of the results, and also the in-person early ballots that have been processed as well. So that I think, this particular topic, I think, does certainly have an impact on mail-in ballots, but I would say the counting ballots group
Okay.
is directly addressing this.
So do you feel that I can remove this from our chart because another committee is addressing this?
Well, what I would do is just for transparency and accountability, from my part, particularly, what I would just put in is note that the counting ballots committee is addressing this particular issue. I would leave it in
Okay.
this document, but I would just say this is really in their jurisdiction as opposed to
Okay.
ours.
I put note, the counting ballots committee is addressing this issue. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Works for me.
Okay, let me just highlight this. Or I should say, maybe I shouldn't highlight this. I change the color of it.
And can I add one comment to that?
Sure, sure.
I think your point of whether who's making the claim is really not the issue we're trying to resolve. It's more about the validity of the claim. So I think
Yes.
maybe taking the note out of whether it happened on one side of the conversation or the other is not really relevant to the value of the question.
Okay, so how does everybody feel? Can I remove? Because it's just put in based upon what I took from people's personal contribution. Do you want me to take out in the same vein and down?
I think whatever the group thinks, but I thought your point was valid because it happens on both sides of the conversation. So I don't know that
Yeah,
that's what we're trying to resolve.
right.
Right.
How about this? How about this section right here? The outcome, take this little section out and say at the end, the outcome is determined the moment the final ballot is cast.
I'm okay with that.
How's the other group members?
Well, first blush, I'm okay with it. Yeah.
Deandra, Fakemi, Brandon,
I agree. I think it's fine.
okay. All right, so then we'll keep it like that. That's the discussion, right? This is the little discussion piece.
All right.
All right, there is a general lack of awareness that mail-in voting is an option. And the person said, I believe it is imperative to get a general understanding of this to then evaluate its accessibility. In evaluating accessibility, we should then discuss how accessible official ballot drop sites are for different cities and communities in the North Carolina. So there's two things here. There's a general lack of awareness, but then this person is saying, well, as we evaluate accessibility, maybe we should discuss accessibility through official ballot drop sites. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I understand the assumption. I think if we're trying to say whether we think those assumptions are valid, I think that's a valid assumption in my view.
I agree. I think it's
Without
very
any
valid.
information behind it, I've just pretty much people I've talked to are not always aware of what those options are.
Well, just remember that we're basing, this is an assumption on our part. And so when we develop the survey, which there's some questions related to this, then we can then come back to our assumption and say, well, is this true? Or, is
Right.
this correct or
Mhm.
accurate? So
Mhm.
let's leave it here
Mhm.
like that.
All right.
And I would say the second paragraph here, we should just say, a note that in evaluating accessibility, we should then discuss how, the accessibility of official ballot drop sites and how
And-
they are different. I would say, and how they are different.
All right.
And I think the conversation among the steering committee, the group of us that are helping each of these committees, this was a topic of discussion that we had about, some states have drop box for ballots. North Carolina does not. So, this is certainly something that I think within the purview, I would say probably of this committee, since it would be most closely associated with the mail-in vote method, this would be something that I think we would need to address.
Yeah, I agree. Let's address that. I'll put that on the agenda for next time. We can start addressing ballot drop boxes in some of our conversation. How does that sound for everybody?
Good.
Okay, because that's going to be a big discussion. Let's move on then, if everybody's okay with that assumption. There is a high probability of mail-in ballots being lost in USPS mailing delivery processes. Regarding the security of mail-in ballots, I feel that our committee should evaluate the process and routine of collections. Since there is a high chance that the ballot is being mailed, and it is not unusual for mail to get lost in the flow of things, how is it ensured that a ballot is not misplaced or lost? And I would say also destroyed. Because when I was working on the Board of Elections in Orange County, we couldn't accept the ballot. We had to go through a curing process if we were able to determine who it came from, because it was so badly damaged.
It was unintentionally destroyed.
It didn't seem like it. It seemed like it went through one heck of a travel. That's what I felt.
Well, if I might say, is that a proper assumption, though, that if there's a high probability of mail-in ballots being lost? I mean, if I was a UPS worker, I'd be awfully upset of a U.S. Postal Service worker at that statement. I mean, is that true?
Yeah, I agree. I would probably take out high and just make it a general probability.
How about there is potential
All right.
That's-
Yeah.
of mail-in, yeah, that's much better.
Yeah.
There is potential of mail-in ballots being lost,
Do
which
you want
it
to say
is true.
misplaced? Do you want to say misplaced, lost, or damaged, or just
Damaged. I'll use damaged. So how's this?
destroyed? Makes it sound like somebody actually destroyed it, unless you.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep, thank you for that. It should be labeled as damaged, in my opinion. Yes. Misplaced, lost, or damaged. I use destroyed because we had to destroy them.
Oh, right.
They weren't eligible. So,
Yeah.
So yes. All right, let's move it on. Drop boxes used by election officials are easily tampered with and increase risk for election crimes. No discussion.
Can I just say something on the one previous?
Yes.
Can we also say not arriving within
Oh, yes.
has to arrive within 3 days after the election? It can be postmarked before the election, but it still has to arrive within a certain time to still be counted. So maybe it takes longer to get there.
And
So
this
how
year,
should I? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, this year, with the changes passed by the legislature, this year's mail-in ballots have to arrive by election day, by the end of the election day. So that 3-day grace period is no longer in effect.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So what we're asking here, and what we're saying here is that there's a potential of mail-in ballots that will not be arriving by 5 p.m. on election day, but we're associating this problem with maybe some possible deficiencies or lack of, or different, or problems with processes within the USPS.
Right.
And I think that's very fair. It's very fair. A lot of times they are not stamped. It's inconsistent. And it would be so nice to have, and I'm saying this from my own experience, it would be so nice to have a USPS system that has a solid process and protection and security or chain of custody of those mail-in ballots. It's obviously a ballot that they're seeing.
Yeah.
So you can't mistake it if you're trained. So in how they handle those, it would be nice to understand what the process is. They may say, well, we have processes put in place in handling them. But are they being utilized in the state of North Carolina? Can we bring about awareness to our postal service in North Carolina? You know, bringing them into the conversation, having some accountability, or some pledges that say, yes, we will take a look at our processes internally, and, you know, something that this commission can recommend for that particular agency, because I think it's a problem, me personally. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but that's me.
Right.
Any other thoughts?
I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I wonder if Dr. Bitzer has a statistic on, of those mail-in ballots, is there a percentage of them that are from military overseas, like from an APO address that you would then know and say, you know, especially if they're coming from, you know, who knows where, is there a percentage, maybe 2% of the mail-in ballots are from military or something like that?
I believe that there is a way to track that.
There is.
My understanding is when it comes particularly to military ballots, there may be a different standard, quote unquote, than somebody who lives in state and is returning the absentee by mail ballot. But I can certainly get that information and confirm that with the State Board of Elections, look into the data and see what the data tells us.
Okay,
Yeah, I highlighted this. I made it in red for you. Okay.
Okay.
I have just a quick question, and I'm not sure. I know with overseas ballots, like there are some weird other ways that you can submit it. Is there any way that over the internet that they could submit a ballot? So like say someone's in a war zone or something. I know that there might be some other extenuating circumstances, but would that go under our purview of, like, I know some states have done, like Delaware, for example, did have internet voting during the primary and during COVID. So like, would that be like under our heading as well? Like the potential for casting a ballot over internet or fax or some other way?
I think particularly for mail-in ballots, that delivery mechanism is certainly under the purview of this group. I do know that in the past, I've come across data that shows when a ballot was returned in some elections. I don't recall exactly which ones, but I know I have seen the word fax as a delivery method. So let me look into that, and I will certainly follow up with that. But on the internet deposit delivery mechanism, that I'm not familiar with. So I'd have to do some research and ask some folks, particularly at the state board.
Okay, I put that down. I said further discussion regarding potential use of internet-based ballot delivery for military. Investigate fax as a delivery method. How's that? Is that okay?
Yep.
All right, let's move on. If everybody's okay, we got 9 minutes. Let's tackle one more. Drop boxes used by election officials are easily tampered with and increase risk for election crimes. Drop boxes used by election officials are easily tampered with and increase risk for election crimes.
I don't have any basis for that, but I know there's an argument out there that they're less secure. But I don't have any. I don't know if anybody else does, but I don't have any background and information to say that.
Well, didn't we already discuss that we don't have drop boxes in North Carolina?
Oh, that's right. We
I was
don't.
gonna say the same
right.
thing too. I saw it was blank. I thought maybe that was the reason why.
Okay, so all right, so let's put
Can
that
I-
there.
I
I'll
make
put that note. I'll put that note from, I think it was Bill that gave it. There's a potential for drop boxes
Yeah,
to be less secure. However, in North Carolina, drop boxes are not available, right? Or not
Right.
allowed.
Right.
Is that
Can I
okay
make
for
a
everybody?
quick comment?
Yep.
I think one of the hot topics a couple years ago were about I want to say it was Georgia and Florida had very stringent and criminal penalties for election officials who left drop boxes unattended, or there's other states who have drop boxes have penalties for election officials who like didn't watch it 24/7. So there is like, if drop boxes are to be recommended, like there are all other things that need to be considered.
Right. That's a good point.
How's that?
I would say state penalties. I think it's just like state crimes. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
okay.
would be, yeah.
State penalties for those who violate the integrity of the drop boxes. How's that? Or security?
I can double check on those laws. I think I researched them for something. So
Okay,
that's what,
Nadine, is that Nadine talking?
yes, that's me.
Okay, I can't see you. Nadine has volunteered to research data regarding this issue. How's that?
Sounds good. Sounds good. I can do that.
Let me mark that in red so that it stands out to me when I develop my meeting minutes. Okay, now it's 7:54. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more. Let's do one more real quick. Not every registered qualified voting citizen of North Carolina is able to vote in person by reason of disability, illness, lack of access to transportation, or other such circumstance. Stated otherwise, every registered qualified voting citizen of North Carolina has or should have the right to cast a vote, whether in person or by mail-in ballot voting.
Yeah, this could be an issue. I do voter registration at the detention centers. So you have to provide, that could disfranchise people because you have to provide a stamp. So, I mean, a lot of people might not have money for the stamp. Voter registration inside the detention centers can really be an issue because first we have to get them registered. Then we have to get them to request absentee ballots. Then they have to mail them back to absentee ballots. And then we provide the envelopes and stamps for them. And then so it makes it easy for them to be able to mail their ballots back out. So that can create a severe barrier because a lot of times, a lot of these people don't have money to eat, right? So
is voter registration require a stamp?
no,
Or is
voter
it
registration doesn't,
postage
but
paid?
providing an absentee ballot does.
The absentee ballot requires somebody to put a stamp on it.
Yes, they have to mail it back. Yep. So if they
Okay,
don't have
well,
a stamp, so if they don't have a stamp or they can't buy a stamp, then so we provide the stamps for them for free because a lot of them might not have any money at all.
okay, so that's a good point. So that is something helpful because we have voter registration that does not need a stamp, yet mail-in voting does. So
Absolutely.
maybe that is one example of a recommendation that would decrease the disparity and encourage accessibility to mail-in voting, is to be able to have a postage paid on the mail-in voting envelopes. They all get them, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, like I said, that could disfranchise people, right? And that's why when people say that, mail-in voting is free access, it's really not. It's really not.
How does everybody feel about that?
Oh, I think that's definitely true, in nursing homes, in a variety of places. that, you know, they don't have a stamp, they don't, it's a certainly a hindrance.
Well, and it's not just about money. It's also about how many times have you wanted to put a stamp on a letter, and because it was not readily available, you didn't have one, it had to wait, maybe it never got mailed. And that could speak to some of the people with disabilities that cannot travel. They don't have transportation. Maybe they don't have anybody to go get a book of stamps for them. Maybe they have the money, but they just don't have the transportation or means to be able to get from point A to point B, you know, to get a book of stamps. This to me is like a simple solution. Is to be able to provide on all election ballots, the envelopes is be able to say that we're postage paid, you know?
Yeah, I've spoke to voters in rural areas. Then, I mean, they just like you said, transportation. They're not. I mean, they're near a store to purchase stamps. It's just too far away, right? So you're absolutely
Exactly.
correct from all levels.
Well, and I just went to the store last week. I was in Office Depot, and they are supposed to have stamps. And I went to get some stamps there. I was getting some other things. They didn't have any stamps. So that would require me to have to go to the post office, which I didn't have time. And so right there is a simple example that it's not, the stamps are not easily, you know, readily available. It's not anybody's fault or whatever. It's just not readily available. And so therefore it changes your behavior and what your decision is. It's like, well, I guess I'm not going to go get stamps. That can, you know, turn into something if you are somebody that's a shut-in. They got the ballot in the mail. They just they can't get the stamp to mail it. So this is a fun one, actually. That would be a great recommendation. How's that for everybody?
Yeah, I agree. That's a very good point. I think that can easily get overlooked, so it's very
Yep.
good.
Yep. Okay, so on that note, everybody, guess what? It's 8 o'clock. Let me stop sharing so I can see all your faces.
My video stopped and went wonky, so I'm still here, but you can't see
Okay,
me.
I get you. Well, listen, thank you everybody for showing up tonight. I've had an enjoyable 1 hour. I've learned a lot already. Thank you, Michael, for all of the back work that you had. You came prepared. So you must have been looking at our meeting minutes, and you came prepared with the right data. And that's what we need. We need to have the data when we're talking about it, because we only meet once a month. My final question is this. I would say for homework, let's all continue on. Let's not stop. Let's take your time from where we stopped. I will make sure that you see my meeting minutes and where we left off. And what I would like for the next piece of homework is that is for you to submit to me, let's say in 2 weeks, submit to me your data or your opinion or your insight in that little box that we haven't addressed yet. Okay? And then I can compile that, and then that way we can move on, we can address it. I can work, who would like to help me, who would like to work with me in compiling that? So let's say I'm bringing in 2 weeks your homework to compile and want to discuss this. Is there anybody that's willing to say, hey, let's take a look at this and we can fix it up a little bit or put some, you know, caveats on it? You would?
I'm happy
Okay.
to help.
Thank you, Michael. Anybody else that's willing?
I'm computer illiterate.
That's okay. Hey, you got a different gift. That's all right. Or resources. That's okay. So this is what I'll do is I'll wait 2 weeks. If you could please get me your thoughts in for the next list of what we didn't cover, and include data if you can, or links. And I will compile it as fast as I can and get it out to Michael for him to take a look at. And then we will return here together the second Thursday of February. What date is that? Does anybody have a date, a calendar?
Hold on.
The 8th?
Yeah, February 8th.
Okay, February 8th, we're returning together at 7 p.m. Remember
Yeah.
to be thinking, be thinking and taking a look at those surveys and stuff, the survey questions that we didn't get to today. Take a look at everything there and utilize what your skills are in your gifts or understanding and add to that as well. So let's look at the whole document and come up with your homework, okay? Because remember, we're on a tight timeline and we're not meeting very often. So I would like to get things together no later than our March meeting so that we can execute it. And come up with a plan, come up with a plan and execute it in March and April so that we can come back together in May and just really, really wrestle with everything that we came back with. Okay.
All right.
So on
Sounds
that
good.
note,
All right.
all right. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, my email, in my phone number, I'm available at any time if you need anything. And it's been a pleasure once again.
Thank you. Good
Thank
to
Have a
you
nice
so
evening.
much. Have a
All
good
right,
one.
Good to
y'all.
see
Take
everybody.
care.
Take care.
Thank
All right.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.